this video, I'm going to show you how to plan for a 2-block reduction print. With a 2-block reduction print, you have reduction strategies to figure out, and you also have multi-block strategies that you need to figure out. It gives you the opportunity to do a whole lot more than you would do in a 1-block reduction, and it can make a multi-block print more streamlined because you're reducing one or more of the blocks. So there's lots of things at play here. We're going to talk about color separation, we're going to talk about print order and value of the inking, and I'm going to show you how I plan for this. The planning is not necessarily exactly how I'm going to proceed once I start carving, but it really helps me identify some pitfalls and some things that I may not have thought about until I'm in the process, and this saves me from those pitfalls. So I want to walk you through it and show you what I recommend as the easiest way to approach a 2-block reduction print. Here's a chart I made that I think really helps visualize and realize all the options here for how you do a reduction print. So I have block 1 here, block 2 here, and this is print order. What am I printing first, second, third, and optionally a 4th run. Basically, I'm planning a 3-run reduction, 2-block reduction. I also have pieces of colored paper. The yellow is going to stand in for first run, which normally would be very lightest values, or it's going to stand for a very light value print run. The blue is going to stand for medium value. The dark blue is going to stand for very dark value run, and the pink is going to stand for maybe a special metallic run or a second medium value run. When you have a 1-block reduction, you basically are doing this, right? You're carving and printing the lightest values, carving, printing medium, and then carving and printing darker. I'm simplifying this quite a bit because you could be doing blends all the way along, so it isn't just 3 colors we're talking about. And remember that when you print the first run, you're getting the whites of the paper as well. So a 3-run reduction is automatically 4 colors minimum. Then there's, of course, transparencies and the way the colors could overlay and make secondary kinds of colors. And there's printing with opacities. And if you add that into blends, you can get all sorts of mixtures happening. If we were doing a 4-run print, we might do something like this. Lightest values, medium-ish, and then the darkest value at the end. The way I like to talk about reduction is that we're moving towards a key block state of the block, which is a good theoretical way to think about it, right? 10% carved or so, 15, 20%, 25% carved, and then you get to about 50, which is a good for a standalone block. If you're doing 4 runs, though, they could look like this, right? So you could carve 15% for this, 25, 30%, 50, and then you could go beyond that key block state and just carve down to one little section of the block that you're going to print again. Or you carve sort of motes and leave or only ink up one certain area, say with metallics or even whites at the end. A very opaque color could be really cool. What you can see from this is we have a lot of options here. We could do this, which sort of doesn't make sense, right? Normally we'd be finishing with a dark color, but we could start to move these around and get an idea of the print order. Probably would not start with the darkest block and then go light and then go medium. Like that just doesn't really work in relief printmaking. Relief printmaking, you would definitely print this last probably. But you could do this. You could go light, medium, and then a key as your other block. You could even do something like this. Like there's lots of options, right? However, I think the easiest way to do a reduction is this, what I'm calling the Plan A. And that is 1 block has the 2 light runs or the 2 first print runs, and then the second block is a key block. There's advantages to this. One, you could carve the key block and then work backwards, like carve the key block, make a proof on tracing paper, and then that's the one that gets transferred here to start deciding these. Also, if you were going to add a run, you could easily add a run here. So you would have this, right? And then you'd switch to your key block, then you could reduce this to here, and you could print it on top. A lot of options there. Or you could sort of stick this in here. So you'd have one run, then you'd switch to this one, sort of medium-ish value, then to this one, and then back to this one again. I would say the second way, what I'm calling plan B, is this way. That you reduce one block from the first run to the key, and then you stick this other one in as a secondary block. One thing to keep in mind with this is that whatever's on the separate blocks, you have the chance to overlap in a way that you don't have with reduction. So between these two ways, I think they're the easiest to come up with a plan on how you're going to reduce your block. What I would really recommend is that you stick with one of these two ways. And I actually think this way is by far the easiest. This one, you definitely have to figure out how this is going to register to this one and work with this one as well. But I think both of these are pretty straightforward. Also, you have lots of options for adding your fourth run. It could just be like this, or again, you could sort of stick it in between these or have it as a second first run, you know, very light kind of block. This is how I've approached my print. This is a pastel drawing that I took a picture of and then printed it out, then traced it and added some elements, of course. Then I started to do some tracings and figure out what my color separation might be. So I took a black Sharpie. This would be like my key block or the final thing I would print. Did another one where I took yellow as a stand-in for the lightest run and drew in how that one might be carved. And the same thing as I took another sheet of paper and drew in the blue and what that might look like to reduce. I also made another first run drawing, this time in pink, as an alternate to this yellow color. Just trying some different things, mostly trying to figure out what's going to go on in the background. So I'm using the large light box that we all have. I originally drew this. Notice that I'm lining up these X's here, like T-bar marks, as a way to make the drawings register. This is the first color one that I did, thinking about this being a light value run. And I was figuring out some things here. First of all, what was I going to do in the background? And also wanting to preserve a lot of the whites of the paper in the first run. So I did that. Then I took a blue pen, laid it on top of here, lining it up. And I started to draw with the blue pen, realizing that even though I wasn't necessarily going to print in these colors, I could see some mixing definitely between the pink and the blue and getting purple in some areas. Also, as I did this, I was thinking that these are my two lighter runs. So if I'm going to have them on the same block, because I was working with the idea that I was doing plan A here, then that means that wherever I carve here for my first block, I can't have blue here, right? They need to be reducing for each other. That's when I realized that what I had with these two were really two different blocks, in the way I was reducing them. So I set this aside and I did a new first run. I also realized that the pink wasn't working with the colors that I had shown you in the plan, and so that could have been a little more confusing. Okay, so I drew in and I made a new first run block that looks like this. So working on different variations here. What I realized right away by doing this is that I had colored some things in as being solid yellow or solid first run and realized that was a mistake, that I needed to preserve some highlights in these different areas. So instead of drawing this over, I just made pencil marks to remind myself of that. Okay, now when I line this up with my blue block or my medium value reduction, it still is not really reducing quite as well, but it kind of is here. So I could have the yellow almost in all areas, but I would need it in the background here, of course, and then I could reduce it in the blue. Once I had put my lightest color block, you know, my drawing for my separation for this, and then my drawing with my second, I realized that what I had here that I liked, and I liked how this was working, this is not one block reduced. This is two different blocks. And so at that point, I realized that I really wasn't doing plan A. I was actually doing plan B. Here's my key block layer. Notice that I originally just had this line drawing that I had done, you know, from my original drawing. Now I've really converted it more into shape. It's still very linear, but I've set it up as being more like a key run. So I had these two runs, realizing, right, that they really didn't work as reduced blocks. So, and that I was working on plan B. So then I put these on here and looked at it and thought, can I reduce the blue block to make the black block? Would that work with my drawings? And the reality is, no, it wouldn't really. I have the blue hitting in different places. But when I put my yellow on top of my key drawing, I realized, and with some adjustments to my drawing, I realized that actually this yellow could reduce to my key. So again, that's when I realized that this is really what I was doing. I was going from the yellow to the key, and then the blue was like the second block. Going through this process really helped because I thought this would be what I was going to do. But as soon as I made my layered drawings, I realized that I was really working on plan B. So going through and making these drawings and seeing how they layer up really, really helps. The last thing I still have to figure out is, what is my print order? According to plan B and the normal printing light to dark, I would start with this and print it, knowing me, probably blends, probably a lot of blends. And then you'd go to the second run, and it would be a more of a medium value, and that would be printed on top. Again, I would probably do blends. I often do blends in one run going this way and then blends going the other way, just because you get all sorts of complicated overprinting, which looks like a lot more than 3 runs. And then thirdly, you'd print this. And that would be my last run, is printing this. So I like that. I'm comfortable now with this plan. These are not really accurate. You know, I'm going to draw much more accurately how I want to start this, and that's what will be transferred to my block. I want to make sure that my 2 blocks are the same size and mark them if there's some slight variation there. Okay, but the normal kind of way you would print would be to go from light to medium to dark. But what if I want a third run? Because now is the time for me to figure out whether I want to do that. I did really like this run because I liked how it started to set up a pattern in the background that could work with this, and that might be really interesting. Also, when I drew this, I realized that I didn't account for the patterning I probably want to put in the body area. And so if I added this, then there could be areas that, you know, reduce or something with this pattern on both blocks. So I'm kind of thinking that, that it might look more like this, what I'm going to do. I know this doesn't make a whole lot of sense, so let me move this. Like, oops, I might be sort of doing this. In other words, I'm going to print my first run on block 1, which is going to look like this. Then I'm going to print my first run on block 2, which will look something like that. Then I'm going to do this one, and then I'm going to go back to block 1 and do this. It's hard to see layered on the table, but of course up on the window you can kind of see how this might mix together. So this is how I would plan how you do a 3-run, 2-block project. Again, getting rid of this alternate 4th run, it would look something like that when I'm finished. Doing these drawings is not something that I always do, but this was very little time investment, maybe half an hour, to layer up the tracing paper and very quickly draw in how they would be carved. And the amount of clarity this gave me as to which plan worked the best, right? Worth every minute of it, because I probably would have proceeded with plan A, not realizing that really the way that my brain was thinking about the image coming together was really plan B. I hope the process that I just ran through with my layered drawings and my plan A and my plan B help you figure out how you might approach a 2-block reduction. Just know that there's so many ways you can do a reduction. I haven't even really talked about carving strategies or anything like that. There's also using stencils, and as I have mentioned, varying between opaque colors and transparent colors, and if you threw metallics into the works, you'd have all different ways that you could have colors mixing. So I hope this helped, and good luck with your 2-block reduction.